This is Gamers on Tap, the podcast for the thinking gamer, where happy hour meets gaming culture. On the show today, it's a YouTube Tuesday. So I will be talking about all things YouTube. Well, not all things, just some things. I'm your host, Gunner, as always, and you're listening to the February 25th, 2014 edition of the Gamers on Tap podcast. Hello, friends and gamers. I'm your host, Gunner. Thanks for listening. So, I mentioned at the end of yesterday's podcast that I wanted to talk about ideas. Where do ideas come from, or where do my ideas come from? My ideas tend to originate, or I get my best ideas late at night, if I've had a few cocktails. But most importantly, the really good ones, when I'm in the shower. So it got me thinking, as always, what is it about the shower that gives you such great ideas? And hopefully I'm not the only one. And if I am the only one, well, maybe I should just walk myself into the psychology department of the local university and ask them to do a few studies on me. I don't believe I'm the only one that has great ideas when you're in the shower. These epiphanies sometimes. Your mind just starts thinking, you're relaxed, and things come to you. It's a wonderful experience. The rush then is, I have to get out of the shower. I need to write this down. I need to open up my laptop and get all of these notes out before they disappear. Because that is the worst. The worst thing is waking up the next morning, looking at your notes and realizing, well, let me back up. The worst thing for me is waking up after a late night, having great ideas, waking up the next morning, trying to read the notes and realizing I have no idea what I was talking about. It reminds me of that episode of Seinfeld where Jerry Seinfeld wakes up in the middle of the night. He's laughing. He thought of a funny joke. He writes it down. The next morning when he wakes up, he can't even read his own handwriting. So he's taking it around to people, asking them to read the handwriting, and no one can make heads or tails of it. That's what I feel like sometimes. I'm like, there was something amazing here. It's usually some like sophomoric answer to the universe, some existential answer. Like, the world is made of music, but music is made of elements, and elements are of this world. Oh my gosh, mind blown. No, you were just hammered out of your mind. It really wasn't that good. But sometimes when I'm in the shower, I have great ideas. So, if you're ever wondering where my ideas come from, just picture me naked in the shower. That's all you have to do. You're welcome for that. Okay. But honestly, so for creativity, it got me thinking, well, am I the only one? Am I a weirdo? Yes. But am I the only one that has these ideas come to them while in the shower? From psychologytoday.com, which I don't even know if that's a legit website or not, but it sounds okay. Here's a quote from an article that appeared in 2012, so it's kind of old. Recent research confirms this idea, not the idea of the shower, by the way. But where creativity comes up from, and that you're most creative during certain cycles of sleep, or lack thereof, as it were, with this article. In a paper published a few years ago in the journal Thinking and Reasoning, psychologist Marieke Wyeth and her colleagues found that when people have to solve insight problems that require a high degree of creativity, solvers are much more successful when they tackle these problems at the time of day in which they are least alert. So when you're tired, you get more creative. So I thought, yes, of course, whenever I'm tired, I'm creative. That's when I come up with all my brilliant ideas. Like my idea for a restaurant where everything is wrapped in bacon and battered and deep fried. I thought that was a wonderful idea. And everything on our menu would just be stuff that, it'd be like, hey, bring in your McDonald's Big Mac. We're going to wrap it in bacon and deep fry it. Or deep fry it. I thought it would be a great idea. Or like my password-protected alarm clock. Where when the worst thing about an alarm clock is the snooze feature, because that just basically allows you to keep sleeping. It defeats the entire purpose of the alarm clock. Like, why even add that feature? I know this is probably old ground for a lot of comedians, but honestly, it doesn't make very much sense. I can't wake up on my own. I'm going to buy this tool that's going to help me wake up. But I might also want to sleep. So at the point in the day in which you are most likely to want to stay asleep, that point at which you're waking up, we're going to give you the option, wake up or go back to sleep. That seems wrong. So I thought, you know what? They should be password protected. And the password should reset every 12 hours so that you're required to enter a new password right when you fall asleep. Recall that when you wake up, enter the password to be able to hit snooze or turn the alarm off. I thought that would be a great idea. But then again, you probably go insane trying to turn the alarm off in the morning when you can't remember. It's baby faces 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 password. Why couldn't I remember that? Darn it, now I need to change all my passwords. No, that's not my password. Why would my password be baby faces? Seriously? Okay. So there's some other theories out there on when you're most creative. Some of those are close to the end of the workday. It kind of coincides with that idea that when you're not alert any longer. It's at the end of the day between 4 and 5 o'clock. I'm speaking of the end of the normal workday. You're usually most creative. You can think outside the box at that point. There's another factor included in there in that people generally want to get out of the office and go home at that point, so they're more likely to finish work quickly. Whereas you're more alert and aware first thing in the morning, which your activities then should be spent doing some of your administrative routine functions. And that's typically why people, when they first arrive at work, they look through their email and they get to those kind of mundane routine activities. Save the hard problems for the end of the day. You're much more likely to accomplish those. I believe there's another idea about when you're most creative, and that comes from, I heard this from Douglas Rushkoff, the author and media theorist, and he suggests that you should time your activities basically around the lunar cycle, and that there's certain months when you are more apt to be friendly and sociable and you're ready to meet new people, certain times of the lunar cycle that you're more likely to be creative. You can research that. That kind of sounds like some hippie kind of stuff. Again, maybe we're all sitting around, the commune circle and passing around some good hashish. But, hey, if it works for him, it works for him. But there are legitimate, science and studies to back this up. I don't have that reference material for you. You'll have to go find that on your own. So another one is, and get this is my favorite, that drinking, that a little bit of alcohol or any sort of mind-altering drug will actually help you be more creative. And the theory behind this is based on the idea that you are letting go of some of those more cognitive functions, that you're not thinking analytically. You don't need to actually recall information. You don't have to solve problems, math problems. Your mind is kind of free to think creatively at that point. And which obviously leads to creativity. Anybody who has ever smoked out is going to tell you that. They come up with weird ideas. I mean, half the stuff you see on Adult Swim on Cartoon Network after midnight, you'd think they had to have come up with this while they were high. They had to have. The show Squidbillies comes to mind. Like, you just cannot think of a show like that while you're sober. It just wouldn't make sense. There's a movie out there called John Dies at the End. That's another one. You cannot come up with a concept that insane while you're sober and you're in a lucid state of mind. You cannot. It can't happen. Now, like I mentioned on yesterday's show, a certain amount of drinking and creativity can be bad. So if you push it too far, you're no longer creative. You're no longer productive. You're just drunk. Okay, you're about 10 minutes from being comatose. That's not the point we're trying to make. You actually do want to free your mind, relax your mind, free your mind of stresses and that sort of thing, so that you can be creative. You can think outside the box. You can become insightful, really, and that's really what you want to do when you're being creative. Is you're looking for insight into things that you wouldn't see normally in day-to-day life. So I just thought, what a weird thing that all of these things for creativity actually don't coincide with being productive. And if you think about it, they're almost two sides of the same coin. You need creativity and productivity in the workplace, but the two don't necessarily go hand in hand. And you'll always hear about that your creative types will often clash with your with the engineers are the more productive types. And this is evident on the TV show Mad Men. I don't know if you've ever watched that on AMC. It's evident on there. We have creative, and then you have accounts, and accounts are all busy and wearing suits, and the creative types are smoking weed and drawing on the walls and things like that. Well, there's evidence to back this up. Combining the two is really what you want to be successful. However, if your work requires creativity, and clearly I need to be more creative. So how does this all factor into YouTube? Well, there's a lot of creative people out there on YouTube. They're doing a lot of, awesome things. I remember when YouTube first, came out, it was around 2006, and I think I walked into a buddy's office and he had it up on his computer, and I just thought to myself, why would you want to put your home movies up on the internet? Like, that's not interesting. And he was showing me videos, but it was just ridiculous stuff. People playing softball. These are home movies. Why do I need to watch these? This is not interesting. And now look at where it's at. People have taken it and decided to be creative with it. How else can we use this medium? And then you get a lot of really cool things. A lot of the YouTubers I watch, it was because the first time I watched them, it was something that I hadn't seen before. I'm sure maybe they're not the trailblazers, but it was something new to me. The first time I saw Ready Up Live and Green Skull, it was really awesome. I was looking for Halo 4 content. I found his channel, and it was really, really good. I thought, this is awesome. I love this. It just felt like he was talking directly to me. I was getting the Halo 4 news that I wanted, I was interested in. And I thought, this is great. I don't have to go anywhere else. I could just log on to YouTube and get this awesome insight. And so I further explore YouTube, probably much like your story. Then you get into YouTube and you're searching, and YouTube will try and give you some suggestions, and they're really all crap because it's like, oh, this person has 9 million viewers. Well, they have probably when they had 5 million, you've given them the last 4 million because they're the top one recommended YouTube channel to go to. But anyway, sure, I'm not saying those guys are bad, but Smosh and the like. But it's just not for me. It's just not interesting. I don't necessarily enjoy them. But one YouTuber that's a pretty big name out there and highly recommended if you do any sort of video game YouTube search, and that's Boogie2988. I guess he has this character called Francis, and he's a large man, an overweight guy. He's a big nerd. He plays video games. His character, Francis, is pretty much the exact same as who he is in real life, except he talks a little bit funny. And he rages and throws a fit. So it's entertaining. It's fun to watch. I'm a subscriber. I've commented on his videos. I've liked them. But then he also does some commentary every now and then, and he has good insight. Because, listen, anybody who's been playing video games this long has insight and commentary. We all do. Much like if someone's a sports fan, they have insight. Sometimes when you're talking to your buddies at the bar about the game last night, then you hear on talk radio the next day or on ESPN that night, they're having the exact same conversation. That just proves those guys don't have any more insight than you. They just have agents. They have a resume. They look good on camera. They don't stutter when they speak, and that's why they have that job. But they don't necessarily have any more insight than you. And God forbid somebody who's like either a former athlete gets a job at ESPN or NFL Network, and all of a sudden there's some subject matter expert. Well, guess what? There's an expiration date on that. Just like Dan Marino was just let go from the CBS football program. The reason why? No one relates to Dan Marino anymore. He played quarterback in the 80s. He was a great quarterback. He was my hero when I was growing up in Florida. But honestly, no one remembers him. No one remembers him playing. You'd have to be a middle-aged man like myself to do so. So at a certain point, there's an expiration date on that. You have no more insight. You have no more expertise to offer than the average fan who watches constantly. And think about how much of this media we consume. Now, I was just using some football references, but think about if you're playing a video game. You're consuming all this other media. You're watching YouTube videos on it. You're watching gameplay. You're keeping up with your favorite players and esports professionals. You're watching tournaments. You subscribe to the magazines, or you've got the websites bookmarked. You're reading every bit of news that comes out from your favorite publisher or developer. Every single fan can also be a subject matter expert. And I think Boogie is the embodiment of that. He is the perfect example of someone who is a great commentator because he has the knowledge. He's a subject matter expert when it comes to video games, as far as I'm concerned. He doesn't know how to make them. But again, do you think some of the people that you see on television that are analyzing politics or sports or entertainment, do you think they're good at making movies, coaching a successful sports team, or being president of the United States? No, they're not. But they can talk about it and sound really good, and that's their skill. So I think Boogie, yes, he's really good. Now, let me get into what I was really... Took half the show to warm up to this. Two things. On his latest show, he talks about the console wars. And I talked about that on yesterday's show. So I guess it's very topical right now. The Xbox One versus PlayStation 4, things are heating up because PlayStation 4 is arguably winning. It is. Xbox fans and Microsoft fans, you should be worried. You don't have a Halo right now to save your ass. And that's what saved the original Xbox. Without Halo, Xbox would have been a huge failure. It would have been compared to the Atari Jaguar, or maybe even the Sega Dreamcast. I mean, the Dreamcast was an amazing console, but it just lost. So, he talks about the console wars, and basically he says he doesn't buy into it, that it's a bunch of phooey, that you shouldn't argue Xbox versus PlayStation, that you should buy your console based on the games that you like. You know, let your choice in gaming decide which console you want to buy, and don't campaign against the other consoles or the people that like those consoles. And he references his childhood and growing up and remembering the Sega versus Nintendo console wars, which, oh my God, it's also topical because Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg are writing, and I believe they're going to co-direct a movie, Console Wars. And that's going to be based on, let me see if I can find it here. That's going to be based on a book. It's based on a book, Console Wars, Sega, Nintendo, and the Battle That Defined a Generation by Blake Harris. And that book is due out in August. And so the movie, I guess, and the book are going to be timed at the same time. So yeah, how topical. But look, yes, I remember those days as well. And it was basically, if you bought a Sega Master System back in the late 80s, you were probably the only one in your town that had it. Everybody else had a Nintendo Entertainment System, okay? And then when the next generation arrived, and you had Super Nintendo, which was a great gaming system, right on the heels of the Nintendo Entertainment System, which is by far probably one of the greatest experiences in console history. You had the Sega Genesis versus Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo was amazing, but the Genesis was better, and their marketing campaign was better. And that's really when the rivalry kicked off, and it was Sega versus Nintendo. Now, we all know what happened. They're duking it out, and then in comes Sony PlayStation, and they just, wipe the floor clean. Everybody wants a PlayStation after that. Nintendo sticks around because they can keep making consoles. They make the N64, and they had games like GoldenEye, Revolutionary. They had Super Mario, what was it? Sunshine Mario or something like that. It's like one of the greatest video games in history, according to smart people. Not myself, because I've never played that game. But look, what's the point? This is nothing new. We've covered this ground before. These are just competing companies. They're both looking at the same market share, or looking at the same market, trying to expand their market share. There's nothing new. It's like Coke versus Pepsi. Chevy versus Ford. There are companies that compete in the same space, and they battle it out, like I said, for the market. Because people have brand loyalty. And that's been the idea of advertisers, and they've wanted to instill in consumers for a long time. That if you buy this brand one time, you should just keep coming back and buying it again and again and again. That's all well and good. I think we're past that. Like I said, when I'm talking about YouTube, you can be a fan of a lot of YouTubers. It's not like, oh, I'm a fan of this one YouTuber, therefore I can't go over and watch this other YouTuber's show. It's ridiculous. You're not competing against anybody else. We can consume all of it because it's all on our own time. If it was scheduled, if this were broadcast television and it were scheduled to fit an 8 p.m. Eastern primetime slot, well, you can only watch one show live. And again, DVRing your videos and TiVo and on-demand and Netflix is killing that concept as well. You don't need brand loyalty anymore. But Boogie didn't talk about that aspect of it. No, he just said, you should just choose your own games. And to that I say, he's wrong. He's wrong. You can't just choose your own game and decide that that's how you want to buy your console. Because, again, what if you bought a Sega Saturn, a 5th generation console, because you liked a game? Well, that's just money wasted. Now that thing's just a huge paperweight now. What if you bought a Dreamcast? I remember playing a Dreamcast when I was on the USS Peleliu, back in 1999. And I was playing a basketball game, and it was amazing. The graphics were incredible. When I got back to Camp Pendleton, I started looking around to try and buy one of these things. I couldn't find one. They weren't selling anymore. So you can't just buy the console based on the games you like, because the market will decide. If the company doesn't post profits, they're going to make a decision, a quick decision. And next thing you know, that console is done, over with. So the console wars do matter to a certain extent. It's a war because somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. This isn't the console choice. This isn't the console awards show. It's the console war. I would like to see an Oscar war show. Not an Oscar, not the Oscars as an award show, but a war. WAR show. I would love to see those directors. Oh my God, here's the reality meets fiction, where you have the directors and the actors battle it out in some sort of Hunger Games type scenario. And the audience gets to vote on who they like and send them weapons. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. That is what I want. Oh my gosh. See, I must be on a lack of sleep here. See, I'm drinking my coffee. I must be on a lack of sleep because I'm having these great ideas. I should write this one down as well. Future award shows where people, they don't have to kill each other. It could just be like the UFC. They just pummel each other. Oh my gosh. I can't think of any famous actors right off the top of my head, but it would be, oh my goodness, that would be incredible. Or I would just love to see Christopher Nolan and James Cameron in the octagon. That would be so good. I want that right this minute. YouTube, give me that. I thought this was supposed to be on demand for me. So yeah, it's so he talked about that. Then the other thing he was talking about, it was another video a couple of days ago. That's Boogie, by the way, that I'm mentioning. Boogie2988. He talked about his friend or a fellow YouTuber that's pretty famous. This guy's channel is called Bacon Country, I think, or something Brit Bacon, or I don't know. You can do your own Google search. I'm not going to link him or pimp his channel. He's got enough viewers and followers and listeners, which, by the way, I'm uploading these things to YouTube now. And so if you want to find this on YouTube and you're listening to it on your iPod or Zune, I don't know, does anybody have a Zune anymore? Or whatever you're listening to it on, basically your phone, I suppose. I believe the channel is Gunner Nerf, GUNNERNERF. I will tell you the story behind the Gunner Nerf one day. I guarantee you it will shock you. It has nothing to do with Nerf guns, by the way. Anyway, so what was I mentioning? Bacon Country. Yeah, so Boogie he's feeling sorry for his fellow YouTuber, Bacon Country. Because I guess this guy has been getting a lot of negative feedback and commentary on his YouTube, I don't know, his channel in the comments, on Twitter. And so Boogie goes into this diatribe about being YouTube famous and all the horrible things that it could bring with it. And he talks about the price that he pays to make a living doing YouTube. That people prank him, swat his house, try to DDoS him, all of those things that internet trolls like to do. Okay, yeah, I get it. But at the same time, it's also your decision, Boogie. If you go through the extra steps to protect yourself against that, I mean, I don't know. You have to be aware. You put yourself out there, you are welcoming it. I'm not worried right now because I've got 5 viewers on YouTube? That's my family. No, it's actually me 5 times a day, to be perfectly honest. Oh, it's so funny making fun of myself. So, yeah, it's okay. We can be human for a second and be sympathetic and say, you know what, you're right. Cyberbullying is real. You don't like it when people get bullied online to the point that they're actually depressed. People can be harsh. Sometimes on Twitter, when you get a lot of negative comments, it feels like the entire world is railing against you. But these are individual people, and no one's following their Twitter accounts, so they're not really. You're the only one that's reading it, basically, and so it feels much larger than it does. But I think that just speaks to our own narcissism, really. What's hurting is that you've propped yourself up because it's a narcissistic thing to do, to broadcast yourself on YouTube or to do a podcast on what I'm doing. So I'm going to be self-aware. Yes, there's a little bit of narcissism in this. And that I think I have something to say. I want people to hear it. I think it's worth listening to. And I feel bad when I don't get to say it or I don't get to share my thoughts and ideas with people. I'm probably insane, but that's just how I operate. If I don't get it out and share some of these thoughts, that's what sends me into a depression. But there's some narcissism involved. You want feedback. You want to say, you want praise. You want to be accepted. You want those things, and everybody does. But look, we're in a culture right now where Facebook that's what it's all about. It's just a broadcasting yourself. You're not engaging or talking to people. You're trying to broadcast the best image of yourself to people. You're trying to show off. You're trying to look for more likes and friends than everybody else because you want to feel popular. These are all not good and healthy things. I think according to psychologists, like your circle of friends and your close circle of friends and your support group should be about 5 to 15 people. Anything beyond 25 people, our brains actually, the human design cannot handle dealing with any more people than 25 or, that many people. But you're going to have, 1,000 friends on Facebook or 10,000 followers on Twitter? At a certain point, it becomes an act of celebrity. You're doing it because you want to be a celebrity. You want to be an idol. You idolize other celebrities. It's all narcissism. So Bacon Country trying to pull back from it and saying, I can't handle this anymore. It's like, well, maybe you just collapsed under the weight of the narcissistic giant that you built. Maybe there's some irony in that. And I'm sorry, as sympathetic as I try to be, I'm not going to feel sorry for somebody who puts himself out there on the internet and then can't handle the criticism. You made the decision. An author writes a book and puts it out there. Hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours spent, blood, sweat, and tears into this piece of work, or much like a developer making a video game, and puts it out there, and then critics and people, some people like it and some people don't. If you base the success of your work, of your art, on whether people like it or not, then you're not an artist. You're not doing it right. You're doing it for all the wrong reasons. You do it because you can't exist without doing it. You write because you feel compelled to write. You make video games because you feel compelled to make video games. That's what creating art's about. It's an expression that you have to get out. If people like it, great. If they don't, fine. Their criticism shouldn't hurt you. So if you're doing this YouTube thing to be creative, that's a good thing. If you're doing it because you just want to be a celebrity, but then can't handle when people don't like you, again, ironic. It's just ironic. There's a song playing in my head right now from the 90s. Something about rain on the wedding day. I don't know. If I could get the rights to that, I would just play it softly right now underneath the outro to my this YouTube. Yeah, so Boogie, he's got a great channel. I like what he does. I'm a fan, so I'm not telling people that he's not worth watching. But you can disagree sometimes, and I think that's the purpose of commentary, is you're providing commentary analysis so that it's a different point of view, so that it gets people thinking and discussing. And sometimes when someone says for argument's sake, that's really what it is. It's for argument's sake. Sometimes I'm presenting an idea not because I want you to accept my idea, but I want to challenge you to defend yours. Maybe your idea is correct and it's good, but maybe you should work on defending it. That's for argument's sake. Thanks again for listening. Leave a comment, subscribe, share, tweet. Don't be afraid to have this conversation. Thanks again. I am Gunnar, and this was the Gamers on Tap Podcast.